It's Bob McCown. It's John Shannon. It's the Bob McCown podcast, wherever you find your favorite podcast, or you can listen to us at 6 p.m. Eastern on Sirius XM channel 167. Did I get all that straight, Doctor?
Yeah, perfect.
All right, two of our pals are coming on here, who have a lot to say, but don't say very much. Brian Lawton and Darren Pang will join us, and I imagine we're going to be talking about hockey. Is that right?
Yeah, maybe we should, because that's why they were brought on the show by the producer.
Well, then we'll do that.
This is no peanut whistle show. This is a big show. We got the big stars. Everything's important to these guys when it comes to the game of hockey and the National Hockey League.
Well, I'll tolerate the three of you for the next
you enjoy
almost an hour.
You enjoy it. Come on.
It's more tolerant than enjoy.
Oh, yeah. Well,
the break and then Lawton and Pang. Stay tuned. Who knows what'll happen? Back after these messages. And we're back. It's McCowan. It's Shannon. And we're in. If you're watching this on wherever you can watch it, we're in different boxes today because you joined late today, Shannon. I just want the audience to know that that's why you're on the lower tier today.
Wow. See, John, I was early and I get the top tier.
Well, I mean, maybe we should introduce our guests first then, Bob.
Well, Darren Pang is beside me because he was here before you. And then there's Shannon down in the lower corner there. And Brian Lawton was the last to arrive, although he's the best dressed.
Is this Hollywood Squares or what? Is this Hollywood Squares?
It sort of is, yeah.
Brian Lawton for the block.
What kind of a peanut brittle show is this anyhow, you guys?
I'm not even going to start to explain that.
Oh, don't.
I have nowhere particular to start with any great enthusiasm. Having said that, they're starting to name players to the All-Star game, I guess.
Yeah, they did. Yeah,
name All-Stars, and the game's in Vegas.
Yeah.
So we have to assume the game will be played. Should it be played, I guess, is the other question. Panger, do you have any issue with them going ahead with this?
No, I got no issue whatsoever. Let's plow forward here. I just came from a Winter Classic that had 40,000 fans. I did a game last night in St. Louis that had 19,000 fans. I think there's a different mentality, but I think in the States we have different circumstances too. We have a lot more hospitals than you would in Canada if I want to get deeper into that. But I say for the NHL, a marquee event was the Winter Classic. They made sure that went forward, and it was very, very, very successful. And radiant, everything all the way around. The Winter Classic was good, and now the All-Star game it's another marquee event. It's with sponsorship. It's getting the guys together. It's getting them in the sweaters. It's getting them out. And so I'm all for it anyway. Let's go play.
Lawton, you agree?
100%. It depends. Even in the U.S. I mean, I know we're talking about Canada, U.S., but even in the U.S., there's certainly different ideas about how to deal with COVID. My wife is down in Texas today, where we also live occasionally, and there's no COVID in Texas. Banger knows that.
No, not at all.
I just landed in Minnesota today, back from NHL Network, which is essentially in New Jersey, and it's a different feel out there. But at the end of the day, people are tired of COVID. They really are. They want to move forward. Everybody wants to be respectful. It's not easy, but I absolutely think they should have the All-Star game in early February in Vegas. I think it's going to be awesome.
They might need a lot of reserves going on here, because I just found out Pavel Buchnevich of the Blues, although he's not in the All-Star game. But as we go along here with all the testing that they're doing, Bob and John, and I've been part of the Blues where I have been tested for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 days in a row if I'm flying on the charter plane. And it's like the players are looking at you like, we get tested every single day, and it's maybe too much. I think they would all agree it's too much testing for them if they've got nothing going on whatsoever. I can tell you the Blues guys are in COVID right now. Other than I think Tarasenko slightly affected by it, Braden Shen, David Perron, Colton Parayko, these guys. Justin Falk went fishing for 3 days when he had it. He had nothing, So I think that's. But again, going to the All-Star game, I think we're we're going to see some situations where there's going to be a lot of replacements, I would have to think, because they are testing every single day and there's going to be replacements. There just is.
Well, we've gone through the scenario, we went through a period of time where we're all didn't know anything about this disease. We were all afraid of it, and the testing made sense. And, getting the vaccine obviously makes sense. I think we're still on board with that, but I tend to agree with you. People have become obsessed with testing. And, I think you're right. I think we've reached the point where it's almost become too much. And especially with this strain of COVID that's going around, you get sick, but if you've had your shots, that's the worst that's going to happen to you is you get a little flu. That's more or less what it is, huh?
Yeah, I mean, really, it is. And from personally, I think lots. Did you have COVID at one point? You did, because you were. Remember you were in your apartment, giving us a roam around your apartment there in New York.
Exactly.
And when you were sequestered in there, but my wife, I don't know how long ago it was. It was a couple of weeks ago, and she just had a sore throat and she was feeling a little run down. And sure enough, she got tested. She's positive. I mean, she's a 56-year-old, good shape, good shape. Not like the NHL guys, obviously. I mean, she was bouncing back after 24 hours. She's like, it's like a flu, but I was positive. Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, I said, could you play? Could you play tonight if I needed you, honey? She said, I could play tonight, no question.
Well, it's the funny thing about it is that over the years that both you guys were in the NHL and even to last season, flus would run through teams. And I remember when St. Louis was the epicenter of the flu, 3 years ago, Darren?
That's right.
And Columbus went in there, and next thing you know, 12 guys from Columbus have a bad case of the flu.
Remember they had there's a mumps or a measles thing going on. Remember that?
That's right.
That's right. Yeah.
So we've learned to deal and cope with these issues on a micro basis. The problem is on this macro basis is how do we deal with it? And that's in the end, that's where the public health people have different philosophies in the different countries. And I do think, to Darren's point about the amount of hospital beds and access to hospital beds, I do think there's a big difference between the two countries that has created a bit of a divergent opinion. So it's just right now, it's just a fact of life. We're going to deal with it. And we got the NHL's got 103, 104 games they have to reschedule. We're going to get a lot of those during the old Olympic break. We're going to probably extend the season, I think, by a week maybe, and get ready for the Stanley Cup playoffs in May.
I'd say we probably have to, guys. I mean, we're already at a 200-day season this year. It's always been 186 days since as long as when Panger and I were playing in the league. But we went to 200 this year. We've eliminated the Olympics, and I do think we'll need one other week. And that won't change if we keep it to that week. I am told we possibly could tighten up the playoffs a little bit. That's not definitive, but I've been told that we should finish the Stanley Cup in the month of June. And I know the NHL and the Players Association desperately want to get back to that, get people back to what they're used to seeing when they're used to seeing hockey. And I really believe there's a good chance for that, but we're going to know probably in the next 30 to 45 days if we can hit that marker.
Brian, it's got to end in June because we've got to get the boat in the lake and have a good summer.
Well, that's for you and I, but for the rest of the people, I couldn't agree with you more. June, yes, but the draft is, of course, scheduled. I think it's the 7th and 8th or 6th.
Yeah,
6th or 7th or 8th in Montreal as of right now, and that's going to be in July. But that's okay. This would allow us to get back to where. It was so interesting when the pandemic started because people were like, oh, this would be great. Hockey in the summer. Hockey in the summer was great, but only for the markets that were still playing, I found. It wasn't as great maybe for fans in Minnesota when they were eliminated or vice versa. There's a lot of things Minnesotans like what do we say for St. Louisans? What do we call them, Panger?
Yeah, St. Louisans. Yeah, you're right. But I think
St. Louisans. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, once your team, if you got a passionate hockey market or you got a team that your expectations are high and they drop off, clearly the interest does wane. I mean, that's why it's so exciting. The first round is so exciting. The second round is so exciting, and it does drop off because now people are just on about their business and it, maybe they watch the games, but they're not as tuned in as they would be, obviously.
I listen. Now that's a Pandora's box of a conversation because even in my time at the league, I really believe that we did a terrible job once a team was eliminated of telling people to continue to watch games, because the Philadelphia Flyers and their fans would never promote watching Pittsburgh Penguin games ever. That's just not in the nature of our sport, which was stupid. It's like if your McDonald's is closed for the day, you don't tell them to go to the Wendy's across the street. You tell them to go to the nearest McDonald's.
Well, how is it the responsibility of the individual team and not the league?
Well, no, the league too. But it's on two levels. Remember, there's been this very interesting change in people's understanding of how pro sports work. There's a real belief that the league has a tremendously more important role than the teams do. And that's not necessarily true. The teams are the driving force of the league. They are the engine of the league. It's not the other way around. The Philadelphia Flyers have the fan base. The NHL doesn't have the fan base. The Philadelphia Flyers have the fan base. The Blues, the Wild, the Kraken, they have the fan bases. It's not NHL.
And you are going to sit here with a straight face and tell the three of us that if the Philadelphia Flyers announced to their fan base, well, now that we're out, you should go and watch the Pittsburgh Penguins play the rest of the playoffs. Are you out of your mind? You think any Philadelphia Flyer fan is going to do that? You think that would have made some kind of a difference?
By the way, this is the same conversation I had at the league office when I was there, and the same conversation that I had when we talked to the teams. They just refused to do it.
Well,
and I think they have to. I think that if we want to listen, there's a big difference. I think the NBA does a better job of promotion at all the levels. I think Major League Baseball does, and I think the NFL obviously does. And I think this is where the NHL could really improve if everybody pulled in the same direction. That's
good luck
it's a
with
fascinating.
You'll be happy. You'll be happy.
Trust me.
You'll be happy to know, John, that and I noticed that on our TNT game on Wednesday, they call it the big board promoting all the games. And it's like what TNT and ESPN, and we promote the NHL network games coming up. And
yes.
I think there was a time not long ago when I was at ESPN, they weren't going to promote that there was a game coming up on Fox. Not a chance.
And that's my point, Darren.
It has evolved a little bit. I think we have to show partners. The other night when I was doing the game, I said, hey, Joe Whalen is our producer. And I said, hey, Joe, I'm going to pump up that it's on ESPN at prime time. And he kind of goes, we got the big board. We promote all the time. We want our fans to see where is the All-Star game going to be announced in the States here. And he's like, absolutely, you're right. And I'm like, yeah. So you give them a big pump up. Hey, they're going to be on at 6:00. It's going to be on Sports Center. Let's watch it.
Yeah.
And I think that's good for the game in a smaller version. As John said earlier, macro or micro. I think that's a micro version of his macro conversation.
You're so right though, Panger, because we're promoting the games when you're on TNT as
Absolutely.
well as Jackie along with you guys, Kevin Weeks on ESPN. But we're promoting the games, not just our talent. But I love to see that, and we really haven't done that in the past, and I've always kind of wondered. That's above my pay grade, so I don't worry about those things.
Oh, I've seen your pay grade, and it's not above it.
It's way, way above my pay grade, Panger. But I love the concept that we're promoting hockey, because if more people watch ESPN hockey, I have to think more people will watch TNT hockey, and they'll watch the St. Louis Blues regular broadcast for that matter. It's such a trickle-down effect. I love seeing it. So I think that's a great point. But if we're going to do it, we're going to have Clarke make the announcement for Philly fans to watch Pittsburgh. Because I'm dying to hear what you guys have to say about that whole.
He'll be promoting Hexy. He'll be.
Yeah. Or he could promote Colorado games, Brian.
Okay, but that's not the joke. The joke is, I love to do these shows. Tell me what you think. And Panger, you go last. I want to hear from Bob first.
Well, I mean, throwing his former general manager under the bus and then driving over him.
and backing it up and backing it up and backing it up.
Well,
Oh,
I
my
mean,
goodness.
look at, we've all either casually or directly known Clarke for probably 40 years, 50 years. Nothing that comes out of his mouth surprises me. Nothing that he did on the ice, as dirty as it was, surprised me, and nothing that he says surprises me. The only curious thing was I hadn't heard from him for such a long time. I wasn't sure if he was still breathing, but clearly he is, and clearly he's still got the same strong opinions. And I thought it was curious because where I saw the story, I don't know about you guys, it was on a one of the update shows or whatever. And the graphic that they had up was the two of them sitting beside each other up in the box, when they were working together in Philadelphia. And I mean, did he hate him as much then as he apparently does now?
I'm not sure if that was the case, but I think it was interesting that right away that was on I think that was on a local St. Louis podcast with
Andy Strickland
and Andy Strickland.
Yeah.
And they're getting some guests there, and they're getting their guests to say a lot of stuff. And I don't know how that conversation came up, how they would get, Clarke to talk about, Nolan Patrick at the number 2. At that time, all I heard that it was only me. It was really Heischer or Nolan Patrick. I think we were doing the draft, I think, together lots. And I do know that a couple of buddies of mine that are GMs in the league, they went out to Calgary to watch Makar. They were picking later in the draft. And after about 10 minutes, they looked at each other and said, like, what exactly are we doing here? And he's like, well, I mean, and he goes, I remember this GM saying, we got no chance of getting this guy. Like he's 1, 2, 3, or 4. Like that's how high up. So it's not surprising that now they're saying that Cale Makar, but at that particular time, there wasn't a whole lot of Cale Makar at number 1 or number 2.
You also knew with Makar, you weren't going to get him right away because he had committed to go to, he had got to UMass Amherst, right?
Yeah.
And so he said, I'm going to go and have the college experience.
And he did.
Yeah,
The only thing I took exception with it, I'm here in a tech company that my wife and I own. We have a few people, but I have an HR person that came up to me about 10 days ago and said, hey, it's a great resignation going on out there. I'm really worried people are going to all of a sudden quit in the new year. I'm really worried. Like telling me. Finally, I looked at him. I said, what are you going to do about it? You're in charge of HR here. Like, come on, that's your job. Well, Bobby Clarke, I always assumed was in charge even back then of what's going on. So to hear that 4 years later or whatever number of years later, I found it very strange. I really did. Because ultimately, couldn't Bobby, if he knew all that, I don't know. To me, it was bizarre. I mean, everybody's a genius as a Monday morning quarterback, but the whole thing it's very unlike hockey. You don't hear that stuff in hockey very often. That's what shocked me about it.
Which is why it made such big news.
Yeah,
because it's so abnormal to what the code of the game brings. You don't badmouth even an opponent or a teammate publicly. You just don't do it. It just doesn't happen.
No.
And when it does happen, you're usually then probably. You're never exonerated. You're probably put in exile for a day or 2.
Yes and no. I mean, it doesn't happen very often, but if and when it does happen, it usually happens in Philadelphia. That's the only thing I can tell you.
I would personally like to see more banter with players that don't like each other and just say it flat out. Wouldn't you? I mean, all this nice stuff and patting each other on the pads in the warm up. I'm between the benches for all our home game warm ups, and I get it. I mean, there's a lot of the Europeans haven't seen each other for a while, and I know right away which guys you can put it together. Oh, they must play together in Finland. Yeah, look at those 2 guys, those 2 Russians or those 2 Swedes or those 2 Czechs. Now I understand because they don't see each other a lot, and I think with our league right now, you don't play each other a lot. But man, if I just keep picturing some of my old coaches like watching these guys talk for 30, 40 seconds in the warm up, and I wouldn't mind it if a player came out and said, that guy. He's a gutless, whatever. And that guy, I could care less. Like Ted Lindsay, I was just reading some excerpts from Ted Lindsay. I always like reading some of the old guys and some of the things that they say. I mean, but I know we're not going to get back to that ever, but it would be refreshing to see somebody literally say, it's not, what's the saying everybody uses now? That's just the way it is, or whatever the sayings, everybody just kind of sloughs it off. Like, whatever it is, whatever.
Yeah.
No, what about not, how about not whatever? How about, I can't stand that guy. I hate that guy. And I can't wait to play him again. That's what I
Well, wouldn't you like to have a microphone, a hidden microphone or whatever in the San Jose room? And when they're asking the players
about Evander Kane,
Kane, like, really, what did you think of this numbskull? And would you play with him? And with fact hanger, I think you're right that especially in hockey, but in pro sports in general, players are taught to mind their P's and Q's publicly. They're, go to media school, don't say too much, blah, 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 blah. So we're hearing that the Edmonton players are all in favor, or the majority of them, of Kane coming there. Really? Or do we really think that's true?
Situational, Bob. You have a chance to add a very good hockey player for a very low amount of pay and no assets. Do I think it's the right message for Evander Kane that, he's had a lot of noise around himself and people are lined up around the block to sign him? Do I think that's the right message? No. Do I think every team is there? No, I don't. And, the way the world is now, the teams that aren't there haven't been very vocal about it. But I know I've talked to a couple that just said, no chance, not for us. They don't want to jump up and say anything negative about Evander. People are more empathetic in today's world. A lot of people look at Evander and they don't understand, how could you have such great opportunity and repeatedly shoot yourself in the foot? And other people look and say, that's a really sad story. That's a shame to be that young and to have that much in front of you and to not maximize it. So it's a different world now. I don't know which is right or wrong, but I certainly don't begrudge Ken Holland for saying, I need something to jumpstart my team. And we don't have a lot of options because of our salary cap situation, which he inherited. So why not take a shot at it if he wants to play here? I do have two of the best centers in the world, so I know it could be enticing to him. We'll see how that plays out. I'm not so sure something doesn't happen in terms of repercussions for his actions already, because Evander was still an NHL player when some of these alleged violations took place. So that story is nowhere near over yet, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think the general managers here, sorry, Bob, I think the general managers have all done their due diligence. I know for a fact there's a couple that, they went through the roster. They asked their players who played with them. There's a check mark there. One guy really says, hey, I would go to bat for him. I had a good experience with him. Others go, not a chance in the world. Mm-hmm. Then you've got to balance it out and say, is this the guy I wanted, the hill that I'm going to die on to make a commitment to down the stretch? I mean, that's where it becomes a call in which the general managers and the coaches have to listen to their locker room. And if the locker room says, okay, if the locker room has enough experience, if the locker room has enough good experiences with that individual, and he says yes, then you're all for it. But it's not for everyone. This decision to have Evander Kane on your team is not for everyone. And for me personally, it wouldn't be for me.
Well, I think Brian made the point. They're going to pay nothing, essentially. Yeah. They're going to get him for some amount of money for the rest of the season that presumably they can squeeze under the cap. And other teams are looking to do the same. I think we all agree that if it wasn't that situation, if you had to trade for Kane, if you had to give up some kind of an asset for him, the number of teams that have interest drops off dramatically and maybe gets to zero.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The interesting part for me, Bob, is, and Brian touched on it, is what will the league do now? What happens now before Kane can play another game? Is there another hearing? Will he have to go to New York and have a conversation with the commissioner?
Why would he?
Well, because he broke protocol. He broke another protocol
with the American
in the American League while he was still he's on a one-way NHL contract. So he's still an NHL player, and after breaking the rules and being suspended 21 games, breaking the COVID protocols, he broke the COVID protocol again. And so that becomes the question that I think that everybody's asking. And then if you're a general manager like Ken Holland, if do you try to sign him? How much, if he then is suspended before he plays, is he worth signing? There's a few questions still to be answered or asked and answered before I think we see him play another game in the NHL.
Well, we all agree.
Yeah.
Sorry, Panger. We all agree the guy's a talented player, and presumably can help if it's the Edmonton Oilers. But what we're not discussing is what's the downside. The downside isn't that he doesn't score enough goals. The downside is that fragile team is completely destroyed by something that he says, does, how he acts.
And how does it affect the fan? How does it affect the attitude of the fan base?
Of course, who are already angry because this team, who looked like one of the best in the NHL, has been in complete free fall for 2 months?
Yeah.
Another thing about it is, do you want to, your leadership group has to sit on that podium. Your coach and your leadership group are on that podium. What would you say, 90% of the time that they have to answer the questions? I saw an exhausted Connor McDavid try and answer the questions. You think, and I'm not just saying Edmonton, but any captain, any assistant, any of the leaders have to step up there, and the questions are going to be about one individual player. And that can be an exhausting thing when you're trying to formulate this team concept and driving hard, that it's going to get tougher and tougher come end of February, March, April, so I'm not sure if you want that extra energy that's going to take place answering questions every single day.
Well, and you don't want the pressure of having to lie every night, if in fact it comes to that, right? Because that's what they're going to do. That's what,
and pure distraction. You guys remember in Boston, after they won the Stanley Cup, and Tim Thomas refused to go to the White House.
Yep.
And then refused to ask questions about it. Then all the reporters did was go to every other player and say, "What do you think of Tim Thomas not going to the White House?"
Of course.
And it became an unbelievable distraction within that dressing room, and to the point where the players were mad at Thomas for not answering the questions.
We got to take a break. We'll come back. Darren Pang, Brian Lawton with us. We'll return after these messages. McCowan, it's Shannon, it's Lawton, it's Pang, as we're just throwing the puck around here.
That sounds like a law firm.
On a few Friday afternoon things. So the Winter Olympics are going to take place. They are not going to include the NHL players. I see Claude Julien and Shane Doan are going to run Team Canada, whatever it winds up being. But here's what's interesting that I have heard very few people, well, I haven't heard anybody talk about. We do expect the NHL to reschedule games during the 18-day break, do we not?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So for the first time, I guess, since NHL players started going to the Olympics.
No, 2018, Bob.
Oh, okay, that's right.
2018.
Well, what's the impact to hockey at the Olympics? Not just because the NHL players aren't going, but because NHL games are going to be played, and in many occasions, directly opposite. Although time difference, I guess, would dictate.
Big time difference.
That won't be a problem. But how does that impact this? How does it impact your interest in the Olympic Games, if at all? Panger, to you first.
I'm let me see.
You've checked out.
Time difference. The time difference is big. John and I were in Japan. How many of those games in Japan and Nagano, John, were on prime time?
None.
Were any of them?
And it was all basically 10 p.m. or 9 a.m. or something like that.
Yeah. Now that's different because that was the first time that NHL players went, and Wayne Gretzky was like the Beatles coming off that train. I remember that quite vividly. But how much interest do I have? I have more interest in the NHL at that time. I have more interest in. I never was beforehand. I watch a little bit of the Olympics, but I guess I grew up wanting to be an NHL player. I had way more interest in the NHL ever than I did with the Olympics. I just did. 1980 changed things, and I got to play with Jack O'Callahan, and I really got to study that. Even though when I first met Jack O'Callahan in 1984, and I was called up for the playoffs, I mean, even the players in the NHL didn't really give that gold medal a whole lot of respect back then because everybody just wanted to play in the NHL. But as time went on, you really had a different respect and a different way of thinking about 1980, especially. I like amateurs playing in it. I like to see some heroic stories and some different things. But as far as I'm concerned, I'm more concerned in watching NHL games because that's the job that I have.
Yeah, it's interesting. The U.S. team announced their roster yesterday, and they had 3 teenagers on the team, and that hasn't happened since Matthew Tkachuk in '92. I can't even remember who the other teenager was with him way back when. There was 2. But I love the idea of what soccer does for the Olympics. They do 23 and under, best players in the world. And to me, I don't know, especially when it's in these different time zones, that feels like the right answer. I think about some of the kids that Canada is going to have on their teams. I'll tune in for that. I'll be really excited about that. I'll be really excited.
But they're all in the NHL.
Yeah, well, yes, but you've got Brock Faber, Matty Beniers, and Jake Sanderson are all in college hockey. All 3 of those kids are on the U.S. team. All 3 of those kids eventually are going to play a big role in the NHL. Jake Sanderson, I'm convinced, could play right now for the Ottawa Senators in their top 4, not just play. Matty Beniers, I'm convinced, could certainly make Seattle right now. Brock Faber, I think, is a little bit farther away, but he's doing a great job at the University of Minnesota. And I would love if the whole team was like that. I would go back and watch all those games regardless what time they're at. But a hybrid, Andy Meal, names that, you guys will remember, but, I don't know if that does it. I wish we would go straight to that format. Yeah. And I wish we could create, like soccer has, our own World Cup style event. It doesn't have to be in an Olympic year. The Olympics are always so special because, as Panger knows, even though you didn't necessarily follow it in 1980, Jim Craig was universally known in the United States after the Olympics. The grandmother in Florida, which had no NHL hockey, knew who Jim Craig was. So it does transcend another level, but I feel like that's mitigated as we've gone on in time and all these outlets are available to people around the world, how you want them, when you want them. So it's definitely different for me now.
Brian, we've talked about on this show about every 4th year the World Junior becoming the Olympic Games. And it really, that kind of fits in with the realm of what you're talking about. It just makes sense. The biggest issue again would be money, because let's face it, the Federation and particularly Hockey Canada makes a ton of money off the World Junior. So they would have to give that up in year 4. And I don't think that would ever happen.
I've been to a number of Olympics, John, and in Torino, I can remember going over and just walking around with Madonna and Parrish and kids I had playing in it. I had a friend that was in the IOC and they got me a badge and I could go anywhere. And the experience was incredible. Yes. It was like there's Sean Carter over there sitting in the main hall eating. Like, I want the players to experience that, because I do think that is otherworldly to have a chance to come together like that. But I also think it inspires great competition. I'm not sure about that in today's world, and Panger can relate to this, with all these different apps that are out there for boys to meet girls. I'm not sure how great that would be, but the concept.
Why are you asking Panger that question?
I'm just kidding. Bob, what happened there?
Don't look at me.
It'd be a lot of swipes for Panger. That's all,
Let me ask you this question. Let me ask both of you guys this question. So people are lamenting that the NHL couldn't go, the players couldn't go. And we've talked about 98 and 2002 and 2006. How much good did going to the Olympics do for the NHL? How much did it help promote the game, in your opinion, over the last 25 years? Did it help? And was it worth the cost? Was it worth it?
Well, how many times have we gone to? In 1997, the NHL sent Vancouver and Anaheim to Tokyo. The late Dave Strader and I got the call from ESPN, and we were going to go do 2 games in Tokyo. And I remember at that particular point, we're selling games the Japanese like it, the Asian markets. We're gonna really grow the game here. And you leave it and you come back home and you wonder, did we grow the game? I mean, are the local Japanese, are they starting hockey? Are they loving hockey? Are they watching hockey on TV? Are they somehow streaming it? Are we getting some revenue from it? I don't know. Goodwill was fantastic, and I think the opportunity for different countries to see NHL players come in and play was very, very exciting. But again, I don't know the answers. I don't know the answers when the teams went over to Sweden and played regular season games there, or they went to the Czech, or they went to Germany. And does anybody have any data for that?
Yeah, you know the answer. You know the answer, and the answer is it has had almost no impact, because if it had any impact, we would all know about it. They would be crowing about it, and they would keep doing it over and over and over again. I mean, Bettman would be talking about it endlessly if there was tangible impact. And because we don't hear about it, we have to assume there wasn't much of any.
Maybe John knows a little bit more on the TV side. Like when I know the rights holders for what are the networks over there that would carry hockey?
In Asia?
ESPN had anywhere in
Europe. Sky Network you're talking about. You're the expert there, John.
The European market is different because people know hockey in Europe. People understand hockey in Europe. I mean, we're close to 30% of the players in the National Hockey League now being European. That's different. Going to Asia is a huge challenge, but it's one of those ones where you say, look at all the people. If we could just get 4% of China, 20% of Japan, the revenues that they would make would be tremendous. But I asked the question, it's almost rhetorical. I just don't think it's made very much difference in 25 years. I don't think it's helped very much.
Do they get Game Center, the Game Center app? I mean, do they get the NHL?
Sure,
I mean, and are they paying, like, I wonder what the subscriptions are, over there to watch games and
yeah, well, they have that information, Panger. We never see it. So that tells you it's probably not huge, or I feel like we would see it, quite frankly.
We do hear a lot about the European markets.
Yes. And you know what? I do a lot of the international games for the All-Star game and these different things for the NHL outdoor games. I do
over 160 countries. And
I get texts from people in the strangest places that heard it or saw it. I just laugh. So I know people are watching it, but I don't think it's big numbers. I think it's been an absolute win for the players and a loss for growing the game of hockey. Players love to be involved in it for the reasons we talked about it, but it hasn't done a lot to grow the game. And in a lot of ways, that is important, obviously, to the players. They get paid on the overall growth of the game, but the way it's set up, the lack of ability to even show the golden goal. I mean, right. I'm not even Canadian, and I'm like,
I agree.
I've never, it's really a shame.
How can we not have the ability to promote what happened? We had TJ Oshie on the St. Louis Blues. We couldn't show any single one of his penalty shots.
That's insane.
That is asinine to me.
Yeah,
that's how we promoting the game when we can't even show it. Yeah. So we stopped talking about it, basically.
Yeah,
great. I rest my case.
Yeah, no, that's all you need to know, John, and you can understand why. I hear some people yelling, generally, particularly agents, which I used to be one, but just, the players want to go and the NHL doesn't care. That's not true. But I could understand it the NHL does care. They have listened to players, or they never would have bent over backwards to try to get this done, because there's nothing in it for them that's tangible that we know. Maybe they have some metrics, but we haven't seen it.
20 years ago, they thought there was something in it, which is why they were more vested in it. And now they realize there isn't anything for them.
Yeah. Two anecdotes. Darren talked about 1998 in Nagano, Japan. And we all know that this is the IOC. This is the world's most exclusive private club in sports. And there's a whole section in every arena that's for IOC delegates only. Brian got to sit in it in Torino, I'm sure. And
every single event, John, and I had a car waiting for me everywhere I went.
Because you were an IOC member.
I ate at the finest places.
Yes, exactly.
It was insane.
So my story is that we were part of running the hockey tournament in Nagano, and I got to walk everywhere I wanted to too, and it was fantastic. But I also every once in a while I'd walk outside. I'd walk outside and see what were the fans doing to get in line. And they were, and Bob experienced this in Vancouver when he went to figure skating. The snake of lines of ticketed people going in to try to get it, taking an hour and a half to get in the arena for security. And I go and I look at the line, and the line for hockey this night is, God, it's got to be a 2-hour wait. A 2-hour wait to get in the arena if you're not a VIP. And I look back, and about 3/4 of the way back in the line with a guy holding a ticket trying to get in to watch the hockey game was Bill Wirtz, the owner of the Chicago Blackhawks.
Yeah. And as Panger knows, he would have taken that really well.
Yeah. And there he was in line at the Big Hat in Nagano trying to get in to watch a hockey game. Do you realize how that would have driven him crazy to be able to do that?
You should have invited him in.
I didn't.
Not
I didn't
as much as Panger, but yes, I do.
I didn't have an extra pass there, and I gave it to you to stand between the benches. So
That's a good point. That's a great story too, by the way. Everybody else was kind of sour that I was the only guy between the benches. No glass, no anything, just me between the benches. Grapes couldn't get down there. Big boy JD couldn't get down there, but the little fella got down there.
Well, I'm impressed that Wirtz would even stand in that line for more than 3 seconds, because I'll tell you, if it was me, I'd have said, screw this.
Yep.
Where's the VIP line? And if I can't get in it, I'm going home. I'll watch the game
telling
on
you right
television.
now, it's going home. It's not as if Nagano to Chicago is
Well, go back to your hotel. Surely to God, even if you have to watch it in Japanese, you can figure it out. So you watch a game on television instead of being in the arena. Big
You know
whoop.
what? One of my great experiences there and is that when you got the sushi, okay, I'm going to go to a foodie here. Okay. So the sushi, I love sushi. It comes around on that kind of
a cart,
but it's all separated by the color of the plate. So when you eat it all and then you hand it in, you've got 3 oranges, 1 red, 1 blue, and then they add it all up and they tell you how much it is. I thought that was the coolest system ever.
Sushi is something I do not understand. I think everything should be cooked medium well, and anything less than that, forget it. You eat raw.
That's a Canadian boy right there. Right there.
Well,
medium well, like a Kolhan shoe.
Well,
boy, I tell you what, your sponsorship, you got, how many sponsors have you mentioned today, Darren? Yeah, the only thing you haven't mentioned is that. Yeah, you haven't mentioned that furnace place in Chesterfield yet. You got to mention that furnace.
Yeah, hot heating and cooling. But hang on.
There's the clubs.
There's the golf clubs right there.
We
There's
knew it was coming out.
There we go.
This is Darren Pang. This is Pang's last appearance on the program, unless he buys some time, because all he's doing is selling commercial sponsors for the guy who's paying him. We understand. Time is our enemy. I had a couple of other things I wanted to throw up, but I know if I did, you three jackals.
We'll be quick.
Oh, no, you won't. You don't have that. You have talent, but you don't have that one. And neither does Lawton. And for sure, Shannon doesn't. So I'll save them. We'll get to them another time. So carry on with your day as it were. And we
decided nothing today. We decided nothing today.
Well, yeah, we did. We decided. We talked about Evander Kane and chemistry and responsibility.
Okay, good.
And we talked about the Olympics, whether we like, I think we covered a lot, John.
Yeah.
And sushi on the plate, that was good.
Yeah. By the way, it's $18 for everything you bought for sushi. So
you're welcome.
Okay. We came up with a couple of new words, something about brittle whistle. Who knows what it was? Bob introduced us.
Peanut whistle.
Peanut whistle. There it is. Okay.
Oh my God. Good
Peanut
memory.
brittle.
You change it to peanut brittle.
Brittle.
Now it's brittle whistle.
No. All right. Enough. Goodbye. We love you, but get lost. There's Darren Pang and Brian Lawton.
I have one more request.
What?
Do you guys always have to have Pang around when I'm on just to make sure I don't say anything out of line? Is that what's going on here?
I don't tell you. Got to talk to. You got to talk to the producer. I've never met the producer. I don't know who books the show.
I'll talk to the producer. Well, I know you don't like him, so we'll try to separate you.
Oh,
one last thing. I just have to get our one last company thing here. We're in the Stanley Cup.
Oh yeah, here we
can
go.
all see that. at Sports Digital. Okay.
Wow. That is sharp.
Okay, we got all the promotions in. Thank you very much.
Good.
you guys.
Okay, good. Yeah.
Our pleasure. See ya.
See you, Bob.
We'll
See you, John.
We'll be
See you,
back
Lawton.
after these messages. And we're back, McCowan. Shh. Darren.
I really, seriously, I think we spoke for 45 minutes with those guys. I don't think we decided anything. Not one thing.
Well, we didn't. What was to be decided?
I don't know.
No,
don't
I
know
didn't
whether-
propose anything dramatic. I asked if the All-Star game should be,
Played.
if the All-Star game being played at the same time as NHL games will, not the All-Star game, the Olympics at the same time will diminish the significance of it. We talked about.
What do you think?
They concurred. Well, the time thing is valid, except, like, I know now that you can watch the Olympic Games on about 50 different networks
Mhm.
if you subscribe to them.
Yeah.
But if you're just watching on the main network, which is still NBC, correct?
NBC in the United States, CBC
Yeah.
in Canada.
Yeah. But in Canada, we show events live.
Yeah.
On NBC, they show events between 8 and 11 p.m. or 8 and midnight,
Well,
and they
Yeah.
show them tape.
and
Delayed.
when the games are in Asia, you have no choice to do that, Bob. That's what you have to do. So
Well, but no, that's not true, John. That's not true. You're making excuses, as you usually do, for the US networks because you aspire to work there once again. The truth of the matter is that in Canada, we show the games live, no matter what time they're on. And then sometimes
yeah.
the networks, if they have space, will replay them in prime time. But you can see them all live. Unless you're going to a network other than NBC, you are not going to be watching a hockey game live.
Oh, you're correct. That's right. You're
So,
correct.
Now
So
you're
they-
going to have the choice of an Olympic game, tape delayed, which you probably know the score for.
Well, you'll never get a full. You'll never get a full game in the prime time show on
I
NBC
get it.
anyway. You'll
I
get
get
you'll
it.
get a 6-minute synopsis.
Well, whatever you get.
Yeah.
Are you going to turn off the NHL game that you're watching in order to see that? It'll have to be something pretty special, I would say.
Yeah.
And so I proposed whether that would make any impact. And I guess the answer, because of the time delay, is nothing. Anyway,
Right.
I think we did agree that there's an alternative, as you and I have talked about many times, and that's send the juniors.
I think it's so simple and so obvious, but it won't happen. So
Well,
just
and
because
we
of
did
mon-
not.
because of money.
I think there's a way around that. But I just want the audience to know that Lawton came up with that on his own, not because he heard us talk about it. And he did the comparison to soccer, and obviously he didn't get right to World Junior, but he liked the idea of under 22s or
Mhm.
22 and under, whatever it is.
22 and under. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. So here's something I was going to bring up, but I'm going to bring it up now. I may bring it up again. There are two things in sport I hate more than anything else, and they are related, directly related. If I
I
could
supposed to
change
guess?
things, sorry,
Am I supposed to guess?
you'll never guess. I wouldn't ask you to guess because you'll never guess it.
Okay. Okay.
If I gave you the first one, you'd probably guess the second one. So I'll give you the
Okay.
first one.
Okay.
You know what I'd like to see stop immediately?
Shootouts.
Every player who scores a goal,
Oh.
stop going along the boards and high-fiving everybody along the boards after every freaking goal that is scored.
Yeah.
Bobby Orr was the best. If somebody didn't tackle him after he scored a goal, he would skate just as hard back to the opposite blue line and stand
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
There's every single goal. You're getting beat.
Where do you think that started?
You're getting beat 8-0. You score a goal to make it 8-1, and you got to go back and
Yeah.
high five everybody on the bench. What a stupid thing. Now,
I
you
think
want
that's.
number two?
I think that started in minor hockey and youth
Well,
hockey.
I don't
in
know
the
where it
United States.
started, but it's time to stop it.
Yeah, I agree with it. Okay.
All right.
Number
The
two.
number two thing?
No.
Think about it. What was number one?
Celebrating goals.
What's number two?
I don't know. Tell me.
NBA players go
Oh.
to the free throw line, and after the
Oh.
first free throw, They have to touch hands with everybody that's on the court. Am I lying? Am I lying?
Funny. Well, it doesn't bother me, but it's funny. Yeah.
It drives me crazy.
Why?
Enough. It's a freaking free throw. A 3-year-old could make a free throw.
Well, obviously not. That's a $5 fine. But that really bothers you that much?
Yes. That
Really?
and the hockey thing. Those two things.
Well, no, here's what will really drive you crazy. Wait for that one time that Steph Curry makes the 3 and then runs along his bench and high fives the guy on the bench.
Or how about if he makes the 3 and gets fouled, high fives everybody along the bench, then goes to the free throw line and high fives the other 4 guys on the court.
Yeah, there you go. Oh.
You know, there was a coach at one point, or somebody who said at one point, and I think it pertained to celebrating in the end zone of a football game. But the phrase was, act as though you've been there before.
And yet, you see, the NFL has brought it back and allowed it to happen. Remember, there used to be a rule.
I know.
There used to be a rule about it. Now, I think that was a compromise in the COVID years, so that they would create some energy in the building, and they've allowed it to continue. And now it's not just touchdowns; it's interceptions, it's sacks, it's everything.
Oh, I hate that stuff too. You know, act like you've been there before. In any event,
but that's the 1964 Cleveland Browns you like. They didn't celebrate anything.
And they haven't had anything to celebrate since.
That's right.
So we don't know how they'd react. We got to go. Have a nice weekend.
Yes, you.
And nice weekend to all you watching or listening. We'll see you on Monday. Goodbye, everybody.